place for really awesome expanded universe panels.
Yeah.
And we hope the tradition continues in the next hour or so. I know it will, it definitely will, because we've got a great lineup here. And let me introduce the folks who are joining me. Right next to me is editor from Del Rey, Erich Schoeneweiss. We have artist Doug Wheatley, and you may be thinking, now he's known for his episode 3 comics adaptation and The Dark Times, and you're thinking, hey, wait a minute, has he done an Essential Guide? Just hold on to that thought, all right? Next to him, we have the co-author of the Essential Atlas and author of the Essential Guide to Warfare, Jason Fry. You've seen his artwork in many an Essential Guide, and you've seen his artwork on Celebration prints that sell out instantly. Mr. Chris Trevas. You probably have his art around your neck now, because a lot of it is on the Celebration badges this year. And next to Chris, new to the Essential Guide fold, we have Mr. Jeff Carlisle.
Not Jamie from Mythbusters.
Who's also sold out this year.
That's right. We have an awesome breakfast. All right, so let's get started. Oops. Oh, there we go.
A little tease there. All right, so we're going to start with just a little bit of business here, and then we'll get to the guys that you guys really want to talk to. I'm really happy to announce that we're going to start releasing the Essential Guide books as ebooks. It's going to start with Pablo's Essential Reader's Companion and Jason's Essential Guide to Warfare. Both will be released in all ebook formats on October 2nd, which is the on-sale date for the Essential Reader's Companion. And then over the following months into next year, et cetera, we're going to go back and pick up the other Essential Guides, Atlas, and Guide to the Forest, alien species, characters, et cetera. So we're really excited about those, and there's probably going to be some cool little special features and stuff in them, so more information to come on that. Other bit of business, the next Essential Guide after the Essential Reader's Companion, and this isn't exactly news because we've talked about it on the Facebook page and you guys know this is coming, but Dan Wallace is writing the next Essential Guide to Characters that's coming out next summer. So we're really excited about that. And the big bit of news I have for you has something to do with the man sitting next to me. This is really a dream come true for me, but Doug Wheatley is going to be illustrating the entire book. Any of you who were at the Dark Horse panel the other day, that kind of mystery project that Randy kept bringing up that he couldn't talk about yet, this is it. So we're really, really excited about this, and we've actually got a few little teaser images for you. These are some of the finished pieces that Doug's done already. So you want to say anything about these?
I'm so incredibly excited to be a part of this project. When I first read the email from Erich, I was like, my heart started beating pretty quick, and I was like, oh, I gotta check my schedule. I'm hoping that it's gonna be able to fit. And once that was worked out, I emailed back and I'm like, I'm your guy. I really want to do this. And yeah, I started with this piece actually because Cad Bane is my absolute favorite character off of the Clone Wars cartoon, and so yeah, I started with this piece just to get into it.
Got a couple more here. Awesome.
Mary Franklin's going to want this one. She's recording it right now. She's going to want to go.
Ben Kenobi. We're also gonna, you'll see Ben as the younger version that we're used to from the Clone Wars and the prequel movies as well, but I particularly really like this one.
Ben Kenobi was a bit of a challenge because I wanted to try and do something with that silhouette that hasn't been seen. And you know, he's such an iconic character, it's so easy to fall into. Yeah. You know.
So here we got Yoda, the matching pose for him.
What I like to call the young Yoda. And then we've got old Yoda. So this is 150 character illustrations by Doug Wheatley in this book. I'm just thrilled to have it. It's been a blast working with him so far. We've actually been working on this since April, about something like that, I think.
Right.
So it's been a few months, and it's just been a dream come true so far. So really excited about this, and we're looking at, I believe, middle of July next year for it. So more to come. We'll be teasing images throughout the year on the Facebook page.
Great.
Yeah. All right. So now I think we'll just let Mr. Fry take over here for a bit. His baby.
My baby. Yeah, I was when I was here at the last celebration. We were still working on Warfare, and I remember kind of looking at my watch, and we get about 2 minutes in before somebody asked if we were addressing the 3 million clones, which I call the 3 millionth rail of Star Wars fandom. So it was a great relief when this book came out, and people, acknowledged that, yeah, we'd addressed that and a lot of other stuff, and seemed to enjoy the book. This book was just an enormous, a ton of fun to do. The way, some of you may know that this book was originally the essential guide to the military with Karen Trevas. When it came to me, a lot of people asked me what's the reason for the title change, and the reason was that drawing on the lessons that Dan Wallace and I learned in the Essential Atlas, like I really saw it as basically an exploration of the Star Wars galaxy and Star Wars history, but through war. But whether that was strategy, great leaders, famous battles, weapons, etc., it would be kind of a shifting view of everything through that lens, if you will. And so, I thought Warfare would convey that better than something that seemed to be really about units and tactics and everything else like that. So we just went on and just, Erich and I had an enormous fun working on it, and my esteemed co-author Paul Urquhart, who couldn't be here, was obviously invaluable and terrific to work with. But one thing that always strikes me about books is, in this case, 2 people get their name on the cover there, but the only reason the book ever exists is because of so many people working really, really hard. Whether it's Erich keeping me on the straight and narrow as much as is humanly possible, or the superb artists on this book, who we'll see some of their work in a minute, or just lots and lots of other people. Dan contributed a bunch of stuff about the Wayne Mancy storm, which this is the right panel for some of you to actually know what that is. What is it talking about? Mike Kogi and I, did lots of thinking about Zim the Despot, who's a character that we just love, and Pablo too. And Nathan O'Keefe, who I think is here. Raise your hand if you're here. Nathan and I, fired back all these wonderful, super geeky notes about what became the Pius Dea Crusades, and that was enormous fun. And we had 3 readers on the Force.net who helped us out with the early manuscript. Is Black Myron here? There he is, who I got to meet today, which was a huge thrill. And as well as just reaching out on the boards when I was stuck on something or wanted some feedback. And and then of course everybody at Lucasfilm. There was one point fairly early on in the project where Paul and I were like, well, blasters, the same blaster, you flip some kind of switch and you can blow a Durasteel door open or burn someone to a crisp, and you flip a switch and then it makes these blue circles and it just stuns them. But how does that work exactly? And we turned to Pablo and turned to Leland, and within a couple hours, Dave Filoni had chipped in, and all these people from LucasArts, and my Gmail wouldn't hold still. It just kept updating, and I kept reading this stuff, and I was just sitting there, and I was like, I have the greatest job in the world. So this book was just an enormous amount of fun. Whether it was filling out the Red Squadron ranks from the Battle of Yavin, which turned into Leland and me going over split-second continuity bloopers and figuring out how to make them work, to talking about the Battle of Endor, to everything else. It was really just a joy to work on, and I'm very happy to have it out there and no longer be this mysterious project would be a real thing we can talk about and enjoy.
Should we take a look at some of the art?
Yeah.
This is Grand Admiral Teshik. This is a wonderful picture by Drew Baker. This was him. He's been sent to die by the Emperor, and the Happen fleet is waiting to tear him apart. And I love the way Drew captured that he knows what's happening, but meanwhile everybody in those crew pits is like, what are we doing? How are we going to get out of this? And he's sort of saying, well, we're not. That's sort of the whole point.
I like that we get to see the Happen fleet. I think that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Also, just to point out, Drew is he's got a booth at the show just outside of Artist Alley, and he paints oil on canvas, and he's got a lot of these paintings there and framed. I really recommend that you guys pop by this afternoon and check it out, and it's just really awesome to see.
These are the Teeny's Warships by Ian Fullwood from the inside title page. This was, it struck me that we had a couple of references to Teeny's ships based on what they had influenced later, but that we'd really never seen one. And I thought, here was a chance to come up with something really iconic. So I made these unbelievably horrible sketches, which I think I was foolish enough to put on my blog for the endnotes, but they got passed on to Ian, and we kind of did was reverse engineer kind of Padme's Chrome Starship and Hutt warships and early Republic stuff, and then kind of take it back thousands of years. And poor Ian, once he figured out what I've been trying to draw and trying to express, really ran with it and created something I think is, you can see signs of later Star Wars stuff in it, but I think it's unique. I just love those shots.
And the plans for you shot.
Modi, the great map maker from the Atlas, was kind enough to come back for a few maps. This is Conispex' Crusades, the old Pius Dia stuff, and I was just having Modi on a project was enormous fun. Explore more geographic craziness, which I never miss.
And I've learned that if I'm going to do an essential guidebook with Jason, I have to assume there's going to be at least one map in it. So.
Sure enough. This is Mandalore the Ultimate with his minions. A terrific Darren Tan work. And Darren is really, everybody on this book are superb artists. It was really great seeing Darren's stuff. I just love the energy and everything, the light, the perspective of this shot. This was, here's a Boba Fett Darhan and the Shell Huts by Chris Scalp. I have loved the character Darhan for years and years and years, and so the chance to do a little excerpt of Boba Fett talking about this with Balance Sheet, little spider guy, and I knew we'd made it on this drawing because we sent it in, and Leland popped up like 5 seconds later. He was like, "I want an action figure of that." All right, mission accomplished. Somebody started a Facebook page. For
I like that Facebook page.
I have too. Please, all of you, go like it as well. I want my Darhan.
The funny thing about this is when, as Essential Reader's Companion was in development, I didn't know that this art was in Warfare because Warfare hadn't come out yet. So I was describing images that I wanted to see illustrated in the Reader's Companion. And I described this, just in text, exactly as it appears, because that was the key scene I wanted illustrated. And sure enough, it's there. I'm like, okay, you can have that one.
This is Jason Palmer. It's a reunion of Trade Federation crews and their families. One thing we tried to do was do some certain points of view on things, shall we say. And so, there's sometimes unreliable narrators about stuff. The other side of that, though, was, the Trade Federation couldn't have been this scheming evil force at the beginning. They had to, like the Republic itself, have come from something that was noble and worked well and then descended. And I thought Jason did a great job. I really love the grand reunion over there. It's a beautiful shot. This is John Van Fleet, the smuggler ship from Dark Times, fleeing probably early Imperial forces. If you recognize, if this conjures up an iconic shot from The Empire Strikes Back for you, that's exactly what we were going for.
And actually, Doug was kind enough to help me out with with reference for the ship on this too, so.
I actually missed this in the book, and it just looks freaking awesome. I'm like, wow, look what they did with it. It's awesome.
This is a Jason Palmer, a stormtrooper recruitment poster. A funny thing that I'm glad to say we caught was that in the first version of this, the Orabesh was perfect, and then I don't remember who it was, but
I think it was Leland that caught it.
whoever it is, I owe them several beers. He said, "Why does it say text goes here in Orabesh?" We were like, to see if you're paying attention, Leland.
But then he fixed the top part, but on the bottom part, he left like a thank you message to me and Jason in there or something. And, yeah, and I'm like, no, you need to take that out too. So.
Rats. Another great Moni map. This is the reconquest of the Rim, the good empire, so to speak, when they're taking the galaxy back from separatists and slavers. I also had a ton of fun with this section because I've always loved the character Shea Hublin, who you only saw in one Russ Manning strip. You couldn't see his face because Princess Leia was throwing a drink in it, and I just kind of, you do this a lot, and I just crossed my fingers that nobody would get there first, and nobody did. So Shea Hublin got to have some adventures. Drew Baker again, female stormtroopers, and. You know, I had great fun this year. Every time I saw a female costumer who was just in plain old stormtrooper gear, I would like ran over and tried to be creepy and took their picture. Thinking that, you know, maybe talking about the female stormtroopers of the Empire maybe had some small contribution to that. I just love this picture, particularly the look on their faces.
You know what's interesting, and I don't know if you knew this at the time, but I think it may have surfaced in Rinsler's Making of Star Wars, but there's these notes that George Lucas has that he had from the making of the first Star Wars, where he did a series of interviews that established and helped build out the universe for early publishing. And one of them, he says, yeah, there are female stormtroopers. There's a certain percentage that are female. So, yeah. So that dates back. That's in George Canon somewhere.
This is Bruno Wernick, the Dark Troopers, of course. Bruno contributed a bunch of wonderful things to Warfare. Just the atmosphere and mood of these amazed me. You know, one thing is true, just as a writer, is you work, and at the end of it, you just have a manuscript. And the part for me that is always really magical is that, you know, that gets handed over to Erich, and then you can kind of, in a way, sit back a little bit and just watch the design emerge and watch the art emerge, and you become, you sometimes feel like a cheerleader, and usually I'm like, wow, that's wonderful too. But it's a real treat as an author just to watch that happen and be able to just kind of enjoy it. There's another Bruno shot, Rebels facing Mars.
That's awesome.
The back cover's similar, but you know, I don't think these guys are going to make it. We'd have to ask Bruno. Maybe that's right before some grand stratagem turns the tide, but next again, time for these guys to get there. This is a Paul Yule's secret rebel meeting with the famous X-wing, and I love, just look at the character. Like, all of their faces look different, and you know, there's we were talking about this in the McQuarrie panel, how you know, Ralph McQuarrie's art looked like a story you could step into, and you know, I feel that way here. Like, there's clearly, you can almost sense the conversation they've been having and what's been happening.
This actually, Doug was supposed to do this piece, and just for scheduling reasons, he wasn't able to do it. And Paul had already finished a couple that he had agreed to do for the book, and it's like, you know what? Let me just take a shot and see if he'll do one or two more. And I called him up, and he jumped on it, and he did this one and the piece with Anakin and Ahsoka. He did both of those in about 2 weeks. It's just fantastic.
Kind of some killer Ewoks. Go ahead.
Well, I think this was one that when Jason and I were putting the art list together, both of us agreed immediately that we had to show the Ewoks as being like ferocious little terrors. So this was one that we were both really, really looking forward to.
Yeah, the writing of this was fun too. We told from the perspective of an Imperial trooper, and I was like, well, he's got to be telling somebody, and I was like, Scale Tawani, why not?
Well, and originally it was just going to be half a page in the book, so it was just the bottom portion of the painting. And then as the layouts were coming together, I realized that I needed it to be a full page, so I went back to Chris Scalf and I'm like, we got to make this a full page. Can you add a little something on top? So he added the ATST, and my favorite bit is just the guy kind of slumped over, like. So the whole thing just came together great.
Stefan Martinera, he also did a superb one of the Targa. Just, I mean, look at that thing. You know, I mean, scale can be tricky. Well, says the writer surrounded by a great artist, but scale can be tricky, kids. But you know, looking at that thing, you can know it's just gigantic, and you can almost feel it coming out of the book and ready to crush you.
And if this thing looks especially cinematic, that's because Stefan is a movie concept artist, and he worked on episode 2, so this feels like right out of Star Wars concept art.
Darren Tan's Hut Worships. I really like the way they summon up, the sail barges and the Ubrikian designs without just looking like kind of sail barges with engines on them. Like they're part of the same family, kind of cousins as you were, but just a wonderful job like that. And I love that imperious-looking hut, approving the work.
Well, and originally too, the sails on it were just simply sails, like the sail barge we see in the movie. And as Jason pointed out, he's like, they wouldn't have sails in space, but we wanted to keep that look. So, inspired by Dooku's solar sailor, it was like, well, what if they were that same sort of concept? So we had him change them to the solar sail so that we could keep the look, but they added a practicality to it as well.
This is Ansel Asau, alias Fractal Sponge. Who just did a lot of really, really wonderful shots of, particularly of dreadnoughts and battle cruisers, which was a lot of fun because it's a part of Star Wars we don't see a lot. Back there, in fact, you can see a ship that was Admiral Geale's ship from the old Marvel. That was fun to do. But Ansel, it was also great because somebody on the Force.net sent me a note. He was like, hey, I know you're working on this book. You really need to see this guy's art. And I was like, well, I obviously can't promise anything. I'll take a look. And I took a look, and honestly, sometimes you do that to be polite. I have to say that I looked at this and I was like, this is amazing. And I showed it to Erich, and Erich was like, yeah, this is amazing. So here we were. You should talk about this one, Erich.
Well, it turns out that John Van Fleet loves droids, which was something I didn't know until we started working on this book. And actually, the Shea Hublin painting, and he snuck a little droid down in the corner. And so we were kind of at the tail end of putting the book together, and we had half a page empty. And John Rinsler at Lucasfilm, who was editing the book with me, he was like, yeah, we really need to fill this page somehow. And the subject of the text just happened to be chatty battle droids. So I called John up at the last second. I'm like, hey, look, I know you love droids. Can you just do like a half-page piece for this? I'm thinking, something where one droid shoot the other one's head off and we just see the commander like holding his head in shame. And I think just a few hours he turned this around and just blew me and Jason away. I mean, we both want t-shirts with this.
Battle droids' faces can't change. They don't have expressions, but look at these guys. I mean, you know exactly what each one of them is thinking or trying to think. And, this was the cap piece for the book, and I was just like,
and it's like a Three Stooges scene too.
Oh, this project. Yes.
All right. I think you know this one a little
Yes,
bit,
I
right?
know this quite well. So, my understanding, you had something at your booth that you were showing people, is that right?
Yeah, I actually have we don't have the finished book yet, but I brought a full printout of the book, like a bind-up that we've got at the booth. So after the panel, if you want to come down and flip through it, please come by, just ask to see it. We'd be happy to show it to you.
Because this does not come out till October, and I know that it did move. It was scheduled for an earlier date, but the reality hit us as we put this together. Much like when we were working on the completed encyclopedia, we went into it thinking we knew how much work would be required for it, and then when like rubber hit the road, we realized, whoa, wait, hold on, this book is going to be much bigger than anticipated. And so as far as essential guide format, it's kind of its own format separate from, it won't line up quite well with your other essential guides, but there's a good reason for that. This thing clocks in at almost 500 pages. And
496.
yeah, couldn't squeeze 4 more.
I didn't want to go over 500 a month.
So it's quite large, and I've been working on it for over 2 years now. And the requirement was, essentially, we were just trying to do a guide to fiction. That's what does that mean? So let's give a summary of every Star Wars fiction story that there is out there that we can. And so that's a tall order. So we had to pare it down. If you were to ask me, well, does it have everything? Does it have this? Does it have this? It's like, no, it doesn't have everything. We had to make some parameters, but at the same time, we really wanted to keep the value of what this book represents. So, I'm going to tell you some of the things that aren't in it, but then I'm going to tell you what is in it, and hopefully you can make the judgment that we made the right choice. Comics aren't in it. There are mentions of comics that we think are important, particularly to novel readers that connect to time frames and storylines. So they are mentioned, but it's not an exhaustive list of comics. Very early on, I did an attempt at putting all comics in there, and I wrote chapter 1, the Old Republic chapter, and that chapter ended up being 5 times the length that was originally allotted for it. I realized, okay, this is not going to work. We're going to have to take comics off. Furthermore, Dark Horse has already done their comics compendiums, and we hope that they do more of them, and so that both of these books can work well in conjunction with each other. And then we made some decisions about young reader fiction. We realized that it's a very important part, especially young adult fiction. People really love the works of Jude Watson, so that is definitely in here. But we made the call not to go younger than 8 years old. So some of the storybooks and the 8x8s in the Random House and the Jar Jar's Mistake and whatever, what was those? The one, that kind of stuff that's really focused towards younger children are not in here.
My Anakin to the rescue is not in.
I'm sorry. But I know someone in here cares about this. The Jedi Prince series does get a sidebar. It does get a mention in there.
It's a pretty big
It's
sidebar.
a pretty substantive sidebar.
All the
too.
covers are in there, so.
I believe the term Moffrins is actually name-checked in the text. So we're happy with that. We also made the decision not to include sort of variable narrative, or choose your own adventure type books, because I didn't want to go in there and say what the definitive storyline is for some of those. Thankfully, there aren't a lot of those, and they are mentioned as subject matter, but they don't get what we call a proper entry. And then the sort of sidebar fiction that would appear in role-playing games or video game guides, those aren't in there either. But short stories, the kind that appear in the Adventure Journal, they're in there. Source material isn't. So source material that's kind of peppered with fictional elements isn't, but a standalone short story is. So that still leaves us with a lot of work. And if I were to do the math, and I just crunched the numbers based on a document I have on my computer, so bear with me, I may have done this incorrectly, but by my count, there's 147 adult novels covered in here, 114 young adult novels, over 170 short stories, and additional sidebars bring the total of 410 individual works that are covered in the book. So it's quite the compendium. And the thought was, how do we organize this material? It is basically chronological. The intent was, a lot of new readers don't know where to go next, and so this tells you what to read next in sequence. But it's not in rigid chronological order. It's more suggested reading. It takes into account things like, if you were going rigid chronological order, you would read the first few chapters of I, Jedi, then jump to one of the books in the Jedi Academy trilogy, then jump back to I, Jedi, and then continue here. We weren't interested in doing that kind of thing because we don't think that's a very good reading experience. Those two series are put back to back, but it's recommended that you read Jedi Academy trilogy first, because I, Jedi gives up the story of Jedi Academy trilogy, and I, Jedi was written with the assumption that most people would have read Jedi Academy trilogy first, that information was known. Same thing with Darth Plagueis. Darth Plagueis, for instance, spans a large period of time. we made the editorial decision to put it in the companion where the story ends and not where the story begins. The reasoning being is that it really gives up the story of episode 1 and other material, and we thought it'd be better to experience those first stories, get that story, and then circle back with Darth Plagueis. So that's some of the rationale between the sequencing and the order of material. Art. So, Erich, do you have the number of the illustrations that are in this book total?
I think we I'm not counting all the covers. I commissioned about 150 to 160 original pieces of art for this.
And the idea was to depict scenes, but we know that there are a lot of characters that people are interested in, and so we thought that in addition to supplementing scenes, we would do individual character portraits, much like was done in the new Essential Chronology. But what's interesting is that we collected the portraits at the start of each chapter, so you get this almost yearbook page of certain characters that are influential to the era or just highlighted for the era, or just, help represent the era, and then you move into the sort of plot-based illustrations.
So this is actually, this is Mir Gev, and all the portraits in the book are painted by Brian Rood, who, he's got a big booth down there in Artist Alley, and just does amazing stuff. Here's Alana with Anji. Couldn't do one without the others.
Who does not want a baby next to him? I mean, really. And while on the subject of little cuddly furries, Windor Pocket. This originally came in without Pocket, and we're like, you gotta have Pocket.
Yeah, all of us collectively, Pablo, myself, Jen Heddle, and Leland, we were all like, where's Pocket? So, and luckily Brian had painted him just standing like this. And so I'm like, Brian, just put him right there, just, you get the fist. And he's like nibbling like a little snack between your fingers.
Here we go.
This is Cal.
You've been waiting since. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cal Omas.
There were a lot of questions on the Facebook page as to whether he would really appear in this book or not, so I specifically chose this to let you know that it had been in the book.
If there's anybody out there who still likes me, I'll confess this, that I pleaded with Pablo and Erich to show him from the back or like behind a plant. And because they're much better people than I am, they wouldn't do it.
Well, funny story on this one, just real quick. He has a very kind of generic description. And I'm trying to put together a reference for Brian for it, and I just kept thinking John Slattery from Mad Men. But you can't use that because he's a known guy. And I'm sitting there at my desk, like just looking through like random images and stuff, and I look up, and one of our printer sales reps just happens to show up at the booth, and I look up and I'm like, it's Cal Omas. So I'm like, do you want to be a Star Wars character?
So these are the portraits, and in addition to the portraits, we have scenes. And while, in addition to writing the book, I would often write really extensive descriptions for the artist of what scene I thought really jumps out of the novel in question. And in some cases, I would just get frustrated with writing. It's like, you know what, let me sketch it. How about this scene? So here's an example of something that actually didn't end up in the book, but I would do this from time to time. I would do really rough sketches to describe what a scene I had in mind that might represent the book. So this is from Deceived, and it's Malgus disposing of his beloved. But we ultimately decided not to use this for a variety of reasons, one of which, in the choosing. Yeah, we just spoiled the ending of the book. So for new readers browsing through it, we thought, well, maybe that's a little too intense, a little too disruptive. So we ended up choosing, and you've probably seen this online, is a different scene from the scene of that Chris Trevas did. That's right. This is the scene right here. So it was of Z-Man and Aaron Lanier skydiving from the exploding Fat Man ship over Coruscant. I don't know, Chris, this was about you. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to it.
It's fun to draw exploding ships. No, the piece was a lot of fun, playing around with the perspective, and yeah, obviously the explosion, had a lot of fun with that.
It's very, very action movie.
Yeah, it is. And she's all calm, and Z-Man's back there kind of screaming.
Yeah. Here's another one of my rough sketches of what I imagine when reading Knight Errant, and it's Kara Holt with in front of one of the Selagians that is helping to make this kind of mind control network on one of her planets, one of the Sith controlled planets. And this one actually did end up in the book, and it was Jeff Carlisle who ran with my sketch and executed this amazing piece.
The funny thing is, I never saw Pablo's sketch.
So look at that. We both thought this is how you compose that scene.
Well, this is how we designed the Chess Claw craft, but we won't get into that.
That's true. It's another story.
Yeah, basically I was looking at it as I wanted the character to look very much like she did in the comics, and I wanted to also kind of play around with style a little bit. I didn't want it to look, so much like some of the stuff that I'd done before, and I kind of hit on the idea that maybe it was going to be kind of almost like an animation style. I wanted it to, like, the backgrounds to kind of feel a little separate from the characters, and I don't know, Pablo's art notes were so specific that it was like I could see it in my head immediately based on what he was doing.
That's a great piece.
Yeah.
Here, another one from Chris. This is from Shadowhunter. Maul and Darshan fighting in industrial areas of Coruscant.
That was a really fun background to do. I just kind of winged it, with looking at a lot of industrial things, and I think the description said something similar to like the feed power generator room.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to get that feel of electricity and power running through it.
Here's a fun one. This is Plagueis being attacked by the assassins at their sort of Order of the Secret Circle, or whatever it is. Canted Circle, his secret society. And this was a challenge because among the things that the novel really describes it in a rather bloody fashion, and for reasons of taste and other considerations, we didn't want to be that graphic in this book. But at the same time, we wanted to capture that desperation, the feel, and also the power of Plagueis. So.
I like to assume that the side of his face you can't see is, all mangled.
And this is by Chris Scalf, is that right?
Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah, I think I drove Chris crazy with this one because I nitpicked this one like crazy. But we finally got it, and I think it's a fantastic piece.
Another one by Trevas. This is from Labyrinth of Evil, the Jedi trying to shuttle Chancellor Palpatine to safety during the attack on Coruscant. And Grievous shows up. So it's a little bit, it incorporates Labyrinth, and incorporates a little bit of the micro-series that plays a similar scene. But this is the picture.
I don't know, it feels self-explanatory.
This one is a particular favorite of mine. I make no secret my love for the Brian Daley books. They are my favorite of the bunch. And what I wanted was, I call it a posed publicity shot. If there was a movie of this is one of the photos that would end up in the publicity key set that would be sent to Entertainment Weekly about what this movie is. So, young Han, and I made in my notes, and I know Chris is a Han fan, so he wouldn't do this. I said, don't put the scar in. It doesn't have the scar yet. Chewie and Bullocks and Blue Max. This is interesting. We puzzled over how to depict the movie novelizations because they were so important. We wanted to have them in there, but we didn't want to make scenes that were absolutely redundant to what was in the content of the film. And one idea that was tossed about, like, what if we used the concept version of characters and scenes? But we didn't think that would work too well because it would sort of like it would throw confusion as to whether or not what the characters really look like and what do these drawings represent. So what I had suggested is we do scenes that aren't in the movie, but were like almost just in the movie. You can imagine that they were there. And so this is just a few frames after Vader steps on the empty Obi-Wan robe. And just, we imagine you would pick it up and contemplate what he's just picked up.
And also after the Falcon is left, too. Because the blast doors closed, and Jeff's argument was, well, they opened the blast doors back up again after the Falcon left. So.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's just Darth Vader with like a gray background behind him, and it'd be like black on gray. So yeah.
Here's a good one. This is from Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, and this is Gormand Adon being basically picked on by a big bully of an Imperial officer in his greenhouse. And
I found out after the fact that Jeff had a little bit of fun with Easter eggs in this one, so let him tell you about that.
Yeah, I have this habit of putting Easter eggs into my illustrations. So Right behind him, you'll see these two little tall yellow plants. Those are triffids.
Yeah.
And then at the base of the triffid, underneath his elbow, you'll see young Audrey 2. And then next to the other triffid on the inside, you'll see what is a giant seed pod, and that's from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now, actually, behind him, and I will always call him Hammerhead, these are some trees which are based on some things that Ralph McQuarrie designed. And then on the other end, you'll see a gigantic plant, and that was from one of the Ithorian illustrations for Guide to Alien Species. I can't.
It was actually Chris's
Yeah.
illustration.
Yeah.
So one for Mara fans, this is from Allegiance. And this is basically Mara telling Darth Vader that these guys, the Hand of Judgment Stormtroopers, they're with me. So this was for this is by Darren Tan. Darren Tan's, I was introduced to Darren Tan's artwork through this book, and I am absolutely amazed by it. Every time Erich sent me a piece of Darren Tan's art, I could not shut up about it. So, great piece. And the thing is, like, we would see it in pencil or just black and white state, and he had it in that black and white state. He captured everything that you see here, and it was just really exciting to see. Another one by Chris. This is not so much a direct scene in the novel, but we just wanted to capture an idea that's in the novel, that Han Solo's hunt for Zinj represented him sort of legitimately being in a military role again, and we thought at some point perhaps he donned the general's outfit during that hunt.
Well, and the helmsman looks kind of familiar. Now, interesting story. I didn't catch that in the sketch. So when he sent the color piece through, I looked at it and I'm like, what? So I emailed him back. I'm like, what is going on here? The last time I saw that guy, he was losing his starship to somebody in the game of Hollow Chess, the Atlas book.
It's around.
Yeah, he does.
Yes.
It's got a very interesting
There's a
backstory.
continuity plan.
Yes, I got it.
But Leland says if he has a
Not
name,
yet.
I'll be able to
I'll
kill
be
him.
I'm gonna have to talk to Shelley about that, make sure we do it.
You may have seen this one online. This is by Darren as well, right?
Yeah.
So this is from Courtship of Princess Leia. It's
I'm just a huge fan of this
such a
piece.
great
I love
piece.
it.
Luke and Tinian coming first contact, basically, in the ruins of the Chuanthor. What's interesting is that in the sketch for this, the only note I gave back is in the sketch for this, he had drawn Luke with his glove on. And we had sent some emails back and forth. It's like, guys, how many years has it been since he got shot in the hand? Why would he keep wearing that one glove? I don't think he's doing that anymore. So.
Well, I think that it was either 2 gloves or no gloves.
Yeah, that was
what you
that
asked
was my
for.
feedback. 2 gloves or no gloves? Or no one glove. He's not rocking that look anymore. Oh, I love this piece. I absolutely love this piece because of all the emotion and expression and anguish that are on the faces of those poor saps. This is Admiral Dalla basically getting rid of the incompetency of the Imperial warlords and Darksaber.
This is the first picture of the Imperial Warlords.
Fun scene. Also by Darren Tan.
If only continuity could be simplified so easily.
Here we've seen a version of this, similar to this in the original Essential Chronology. It was a black and white illustration, but we it's such a memorable and distinctive scene that I wanted to see it kind of captured as full color and vividly. So this is Leia versus Beldorian the Splendid, the lightsaber wielding Hutt from Planet of Twilight. And the thought is like, it's such a bizarre concept, but it occurred to me that if it was ever rendered cinematically, they would make this Hutt giant, scary, and just like, you would really feel the mass, you really feel the threat of it.
Yeah, I just told Chris Scout to just go crazy with him. Look, he's got fangs and it's like
It's
something
just
out of a horror
nightmarish.
movie.
Yeah. This one's by Jeff. This is from Scourge, meeting the Hutts. I don't know if you have anything to-
All I was going to say is, like, it's a spaceship. It's supposed to be resplendent, but they're also huts. So it's going to be kind of cavernous and room-like. It's going to be what's comfortable to huts. And then and we all know that Twi'lek slave girls are very comfortable to huts as well. But one of the things that I like doing is I threw in versions of the bas relief from Jabba's sail barge. And the kind of the way that I justified it is like, well, maybe this was a gift from Jabba a long time ago.
And it's got John cookies in it.
Just got
Cookies.
Here we go, the young Jedi Knights during, before things really fell apart, I suppose. So again, one of these kind of group publicity stills, we sometimes do that to encapsulate a series rather than picking one single moment from the story, because it allows us to get all the characters in there, and it allows you to kind of fill in the scenes in your mind once we kind of arm you with what the characters look like and remind you of where they were at that time. There's an interesting story about this. This one went on online recently, and it's Mara versus a Yuzan-Vong infiltrator, Yeoman Carr, at the Belkadian outpost, and he's throwing thud bugs at her. She's blocking him. And this is by Derek Ken, and we posted this online, and Erich got some interesting feedback.
Yeah, we gave it to Club Jade to put up. They're big Mara Jade fans, and I thought they'd get a kick out of it. And, everybody loved it, but we started getting comments about what lightsaber is she using, because it's not Anakin or Luke's, and it's not the new one she built. Darren had just painted kind of a generic lightsaber hilt on it. And Darren actually saw the comments and emailed me back. And at this point, the book was done, it was at the printer. Darren emailed me, he's like, I really need to fix this lightsaber. I'm like, all right, fine, you've got 24 to 48 hours to get it done. We're going to be too late. So we went with Anakin/Luke's original lightsabers. We've already done the blue blade. And we just wanted to show this to you that yes, we listened to the fans, and we made the correction. So this is how it will look in the book.
This just brings us back. Anakin and Tahiri's first kiss. Illustration from Greg Key's series from New Jedi Order. I know he just thought this is just a scene I wanted to capture. The inclination often when describing scenes, it's like, oh, how about this action scene? How about this action scene? And then I realized, wow, there are other moments that we really want to capture this as well. So it was a challenge to find this balance, and so it's not all lightsaber wielding action scenes. We sometimes show some of the softer, more tender moments.
We've got Luke and Mara, Anakin, Tahiri, and Jaina and Jag.
Yeah, there's some smooches in the book.
Yeah.
Joe Caroni joined us in the project as well.
Sorry about that.
And this is the assassination assassination of Thrakan Sal Solo from the Legacy of the Force series with Fett, Murda, and basically older Han donning Mandalorian armor for this purpose. So there's basically a run through the timeline of Star Wars novels visually depicted. And of course, this is just the start. There are many, many more illustrations in the book. We could go back to the initial, just the logo now, because I think that's the last piece of it.
Yeah, that's the last one.
Yeah, so there you go, a little quick. I think at this stage, we just open some questions.
Yeah, we can 10 or so minutes.
Yeah, so we've got a microphone up here. I'm sure you folks have a lot of questions about these books, and we welcome them. So please don't be shy. Yes, please.
Hi, Pablo. You had told me to ask this question today, so I'm gonna. In one of the essential guides, you see a picture of Corn Horn or Rock Chestnut. Looks like he's wearing traditional green Jedi robes. And you said that it looks like he was, and I asked, is there any chance we could get a full body shot picture of him wearing the green traditional Jedi robes?
So the question is, what would Corn Horn look like from head to toe? Because the one that's, did you do that, Chris? One of the guides. In one of the guides, we have a portrait shot of him, possibly. In one of the guides, we have a portrait shot of him, but not the full body shot. Do we have a full body shot of Corn?
Well, I took a picture of him in the robes to give to Doug for the full body shot for characters. So.
I wish I knew it was Doug. I would have said something to him when I was wearing it.
So it looks like we will be seeing
Excellent. Thank you.
Corn from head to toe and judge whether or not the costume is accurate. So.
And talking about the horns, can we get a picture of Valen and Josella?
Yeah, I think possibly. I'm not positive that it's going to be in characters, but we're also working on our Subaru.com site to do stuff that profiles some other things that don't necessarily, characters and scenes that don't make it into the book, so.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Are you going to make a updated version of the Essential Guide to Reading Companions because of the new books that are coming out?
So, updating the Essential Readers Companion. I just finished it.
It's not even on sale yet.
But that is a good question. It does go all the way to the end of 2012. So when it comes out, it'll have Annihilation in it, it'll have Scoundrels in it. It won't be a full synopsis of those books, but they are represented in there. And we didn't want to spoil those books by the guide coming out first. We are looking at ways of keeping it updated, different ways to add to the text. But you know, this version's going to live for a while. But we did find out. You know, we tried to go through the end of 2012, including anticipating future insider stories, but there is one story that's going to come out before year's end that did not make it into the book because we only just found out about it just now. And it's Timothy Zahn's ebooks or e-story that's coming out. So
Yeah.
Just one more question.
Yeah.
Are we going to see the Averot infesting anyone in the Essential Guide? Like,
No, we did not illustrate Abeloth for. She will be in characters, but she's not in Reader's Companion.
thank you.
She was in Warfare, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She wasn't one for
The
me.
kind of Callista version of her was.
Kind of made a deliberate choice on that too. So.
Just to clarify, with Doug's project, that is the artwork for the character guide, it's not a separate project, right?
Right,
Okay.
that project
Just
that
wanna
Randy
clarify
was
the
hinting
association.
at is this essential
Seen kind of eyes from the
characters.
artwork, that's what
Yeah.
there. Thank you.
Hi. You already said that you're working on new character essential. If I remember correctly, it's the third version of Essentials character. Do you plan on releasing new versions of other Essentials, like vehicles, species, after this?
We're
So with
talking
characters,
about-
so with, I just want to repeat, so with characters, we're basically going back to one of the new essential guides and updating it. Is our plan to do that for any of the other ones?
We're talking about it and we're thinking about it, but no definitive decisions have been made yet.
And one more question. Is there any chance we could get Essential to Star Wars Underworld? Because there are so many influential organizations.
It's something that I'd really like to do, and again, that's another book that we've been talking about for a while. So nothing definitive on that right now, but you know, keep following us on the Facebook page and stuff, and hopefully we'll be doing that book.
Thank you.
Pablo, you kind of stole my thunder with the Jedi Prince series announcement. I was going to ask you about that. Backup question. Mercy Kill, is there any art for that? In particular, a certain dance scene.
No, we did not do the dance scene, but there is a portrait of Indy.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the thing with Mercy Kill was, you know, that we didn't have the manuscript yet when we were working on this. That was one of the last pieces that Pablo wrote for the book, so we were a little limited as to doing art for it.
Yeah, and that was, I read basically what you had, the electronic version of it. And
Yeah.
that was the last one that came in. It was, I remember I was reading it over Memorial Day weekend as fast as possible. Frank's not here, Frank Parisi's not here tonight, because if he was, he would force me to tell this story. I would have to read so
Oh,
much.
no, Frank is.
Oh, is he
he's
here?
in the back there.
All right, well, I'm telling the story for you, Frank. I would have to read so much, because my intent was to read everything before putting it into the book. And to do that, I stopped carpooling and started taking the bus so that it would be a longer ride to get to work to allow me the time to read this stuff. So I would read nonstop, and Frank would see me on the bus, and I'd be like, no, I can't talk to you right now, Frank. I'm too busy. And there was one time he saw me, and I was absolutely relieved because I'd gotten to the point in the timeline where I was reading the daily books, and I was so grateful that I was onto 180-page novels for a change. But also I would get the audio books and listen to them on my iPod at double speed in order to get through as much as possible. You know, in some books I've read recently enough that I didn't have to reread, but I just kind of skimmed them. And in some cases, I used to maintain a website ages ago, in the early 90s, late 90s. And I didn't have to reread that material too much because I took really extensive notes at the time. So there's actually some old material that finally finding an official purpose that I had done way back in the day.
And you also wrote each entry just as a separate file.
Yeah, that became an interesting nightmare of traffic management because I would, instead of writing chapters, I would write, because I was trying to read chronologically, but sometimes I'd have to read stuff as it would come out. So every piece was its own file, and then we try to find the right places to put it up.
I know Jason had to cut a substantial amount of material from Warfare, and I'm sure even with 496 pages, there was stuff that you wanted to get in but couldn't quite. So I'm wondering, what are you wishing most you were able to get in, but for space constraints and whatnot, you couldn't?
Some of the children's books, I thought it would be kind of fun to write summaries for that. I would have wished that we could have cracked the nut for how to do some of the story-based source material, but it just becomes a challenge in presentation because you have to spend so many words describing how it's done. I mean, comics would be like this huge wish, but it would just be so unfeasible in terms of how you present that book. But the funny thing is, there was not much cut after it was written. We were very specific in what we were trying to achieve and trying to get in there. So there was very little wasted writing. We knew what to bet. Like, if anything, the challenge was not cutting material. The challenge was like we kept finding more stuff, and it's like, oh, we have to get this short story in there. We have to get this short story in there. Oh my God, we forgot Outfoxed, the Clone Wars story that appeared on the Target website. Can we put that in there? So,
The day before I went to press, he realized that he had forgotten the Tim Zahn
Hero of Carteo story.
Yeah, because he was putting the Tim Zahn panel together.
For Celebration, I was putting together the Tim Zahn retrospective. And I had written the Hero of Carteo. I had written the short story summary, and as we said, this is a challenge. I wrote each piece separately. So in my mind, I knew that I wrote it. And so we were like all ready to go, and then I realized, hey, I don't remember seeing the layout for that. And I go to Erich's, basically, your last chance page proofs to take a look, and I look like, oh my God, it's not in here, So I emailed him, Burchett, we need to get these 200 words into the book.
Yeah, and which meant I had to rebuild like 6 pages. And he also didn't tell me that it had 3 covers for it.
We got it in there.
We got it in there.
Is that why I hadn't done that one piece?
Actually, I had to shrink it back down to fit his story.
Oh, really?
So he went from 3/4 of a spread to half a page.
It actually, yeah, if this had to happen, it happened in the best possible place because we were able to make it all fit. And my nightmare is that something may have been falling by the wayside. If that's the case, it's all on me. Email me, tell me on my Facebook, and I apologize. But then that just means, the next version we'll have the opportunity to revisit it and add anything that might have been overlooked. But our objective is to try to be as thorough as possible within the page space allotted.
Thank you, guys.
About the digital editions, I know a lot of the e-reader formats have trouble with books and formatting, especially when there's a heavy graphical component involved, especially Kindle. So can you tell me if you've been able to overcome some of those challenges, or is there one e-reader format that looks better and looks more like the original than another?
I have only seen it on an iPad. I know that we have a fantastic ebook team, and they've done books like that Michelle Obama book that just came out, and other big, heavy graphic books. So they're going to make sure that these books look as good as possible on all formats.
Thank you.
And this is going to be our last question.
Great, thanks very much for. Sorry.
You guys can just come to the booth and ask it. Yes, I'll be there the rest of the afternoon.
Okay, I have questions about whether Lieutenant Ketch got a picture.
Alas, he did not.
Oh, darn. And did Jason in the nursery make it in?
Well, wait, were we already talking about New Jedi Order?
Yeah.
That nursery? That's funny. What I thought you meant was a young, 3-year-old Jason with a lightsaber fighting off demons, and you'd think, who would draw something, who would include something that ridiculous in the book? It is in the book. But the Jason from Traitor, that scene is not.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thanks.
All right, that was our last question. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for your interest in
Before everybody takes off, just on behalf of Del Rey and our whole team, and they're all sitting in the back there, and all of our authors and creators that we work with and stuff, we all just want to thank you for an amazing 4 days here. Seriously, you guys are fantastic. We love our fans. We love Star Wars Celebration, and we hope that you guys all had as much fun talking to us as we've had talking to you, and we can't wait for C7 already, so bring it on. Thank you.